Now, as crazy as this is going to sound, the possibility of Auburn and Alabama having similar records in 2023 isn't that far-fetched. Now, before you guys whisk me off to Shutter Island or put me in Arkham Asylum with the Joker and Penguin, let's take a look at how this could actually happen. Now, first off, there is no doubt that Alabama has better personnel overall. Hugh Freeze has a hell of a mountain to climb when it comes to evening that out. But at most spots, the Auburn roster is going to be much improved, including the offensive line. And Bama does have some pretty big question marks at important spots. The Tide's quarterback situation is all but settled, and Bryce Young is gone to the Panthers in the NFL. Now, they also aren't the same dominant team on the line of scrimmage that helped build them into the college football dynasty that we've been used to seeing. The left tackle spot still has some growing to do, and it's very rare to see a new quarterback and left tackle debuting for the Tide in the same season. Now, Bama also just lost a generational defensive talent in Will Anderson, but we know they're going to have a new wave of superstars ready to try and turn the Bama defense into what it used to be. Now, as I mentioned, Auburn upgraded on the offensive line and at pretty much every position, but the biggest question mark for the Tigers is going to be generating a consistent pass rush. You have to have it. Now, the schedule, as usual, is going to tell all. And Bama has to travel to Auburn and to A&M. But outside of that, all their big games are pretty much at home, including a mega matchup in Week 2 against Steve Sarkisian and the Texas Longhorns. Now, Auburn must travel to LSU, Texas A&M, and Arkansas, but their out-of-conference schedule isn't overly difficult. If Auburn can split the home games against Bama and Georgia, and I know that's a big ask, plus go undefeated in the out-of-conference games, the ceiling seems to be around 9-3, which would be a monumental achievement for Hugh Freeze and company in year one. Now, on the other hand, if Alabama struggles to answer the quarterback question and the defense stays about the same as it's been, the Tide going 9-3 for the first time in what seems like forever isn't out of the question. Now, if I was a betting man, I am a betting man, so I will say the odds aren't great on each team finishing with the same record, but they aren't as astronomical as they have been. And Auburn does have a habit of being somewhat sneaky under new coaches in the first year. See Gus Malzahn. And it seems the Bama run of dominance is quickly becoming a thing of the past as we see Georgia take that moniker. But also, sleeping on Nick Saban isn't a great business to be in, and the breaks definitely have to fall into place for this to even be remotely possible. But is it probable? No. But that's why they play the game. And what a hell of a story that would be going into 2024. You want to find out a lot about feeling better, okay? The next day after, go hang out with the boys. It's college football season. We're only 17 days away from the preseason in the NFL, which is crazy to think about. And we all know, look, those night games, they can go late. Having some drinks with the fellas can lead to some not so fun mornings when you have to get up and go to work. And that's where Z-Biotics comes in. All right, it's a pre-alcohol probiotic. It's the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking, and here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. You know that, all right? You don't have to have a PhD to know that. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. So Z-Biotics, basically, it's going to help. That's the way I'm going to put it, Dave. It's a help. We all been there, okay? We all understand it, especially if you're having to watch Pac-12 games over at here. Watch those West Coast games at midnight. We've all had some fun watching games, and the next day you woke up and, didn't exactly feel like $1,000, but with Z-Biotics, you know the deal.
I was in that boat this weekend.
Really?
It's last weekend, yeah. So, you got a little Z in me. A little Z-Biotic. Next thing you know, I woke up and just hopped out of bed like I was possessed.
That's exactly right. In a good way.
See that thing?
The best possession. Z-Biotics. And it comes in this cool kind of black case, too. Wow, it's got no total fat in it. How about that? So you're doing good both ways.
What took so long to invent this?
I know. What genius science.
Look at this.
We need to get that person on here.
Right in time for football season?
That's exactly right. You love to see it. So go to zbiotics.com/booster to get 15% off your first order with code BOOSTER, BOOSTER at checkout. Z-Biotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. That's Z-Biotics, just the letter Z, biotics.com/booster, and use that code BOOSTER at checkout for 15% off your first order. What a great product.
Golly.
And yes, I'm fired up. It's
Right
SEC Media Day week.
Thoughtful.
That's exactly right. I'm going to go in and bring in my co-host, former Michigan quarterback David Cohn, my other co-host, former Western State Colorado wide receiver Blaine Crane. And guys, I know it's not super likely, okay? And Alabama would probably have to lose. I don't see Alabama losing at South Florida. All right, I don't see them losing at Mississippi State. So it'd probably have to be Texas, Texas A&M, and Auburn outside of them dropping the ball at home. But when you look at this Alabama team, if there was an Alabama team that was going to go 9-3, and that one that was in the last 3 to 4 years even had a chance of having the same record as Auburn, this is the one.
So you're saying they're both for sure going to go 9-3?
Yeah, no, it's definitely
so
not
this is
what
your
I'm
final
saying.
prediction?
No, not at all. Not at all. What I'm saying, this year, it is more likely than I can remember it in a long, long, long time.
Yeah, well, when you say long time, 15 years
Yep.
it's been since Nick Saban won under double-digit games.
That's insane.
That was his first season at Alabama. 15 straight seasons. When you look at that, and of those 15 seasons, only once did he win 10 games. The rest of them were over 11. Now, on the Auburn side, in the last 15 years, they've won double-digit games 3 times, and like you mentioned, one of those being Gus Malzahn's first year. I agree with you on the scheduling. Like, if you just take the SEC schedule, I would probably take Alabama's schedule over Auburn's, even though the Iron Bowl will be in Jordan-Hare. But throw in that Texas game into the wrench. Like we're not going to have to wait too long to figure out what's what when the Texas Longhorns come to Tuscaloosa. And everybody's going to be talking about the quarterback position. They should be. The last 4 the Alabama Crimson Tide have had are all going to be playing on Sundays, and we haven't seen Nick Saban have to have a team without that elite quarterback in a long time. But remember, that's how he used to win national championships, was focusing on the defensive side of the ball and turning around and handing the ball off to big-time running backs. I think the Alabama defense is going to be really improved this season. I know it sounds crazy to think when you lose Will Anderson Jr. in the top 3 picks, but I think Nick Saban is going to get back to his roots and say, we have not been good enough on the defensive side of the football. And then, like you mentioned a little bit too, you're really going to see the depth show out from their recruiting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know only 11 can play on the field at the same time, but
it's all
over the
about
course
that.
of a game and over the course of the season, you're going to see that recruiting pay off.
Yeah, and look, you bring in Tommy Rees, new offensive coordinator. It's going to be you go in and run Nick Saban's offense pretty much. At least now you're going to even more with what we've seen. It's not Lane Kiffin. It's not Steve Sarkisian. This is a young guy. And Alabama built up who they were by having not just the best starting 5 on the offensive line and the best guys starting on the defensive line, but they out-depthed you up front. That's how they beat you. But it seems like now the college football pendulum has swung where other teams can not only compete with Alabama with this, from a starting lineman standpoint, but from a depth standpoint. Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State. It's not just Bama has the best lineman. They can say, you know what? We can have Jake Coker back there. Jake was a really good player. I'm not saying he's not. But they could turn around and hand the ball off at any point in time and just line up and say, I'm better than you. Defensively, they were so much better than your offensive line was up front. They could just stymie you. They could win low-scoring games. If they scored 24 points or more, they're going to win every one. That isn't what it is anymore. You look at how many times Bryce Young saved them last year, and Texas game, I can go down the list. All right, even the games they lost, he kept them in it. The Tennessee game, other ones like that. This isn't the same Alabama team that just is so much better than you are up front that they can be simple. What I worry about now, if I was an Alabama fan, is that you haven't been able to line up and run the ball at will when the other team knew you were going to run it like you used to. So now you don't have Bryce Young. You don't have a quarterback that can go in there and walk into the phone booth and come out and be Superman. You're going to find yourselves in a lot lower scoring games. You're going to find yourselves in a lot closer games. And if that defense isn't what it used to be, Blaine, it's going to be kind of a different flavor in Tuscaloosa this year.
Well, the one thing I will say, that was last year's team. You got to think Alabama with the most penalized defense in the nation, they ended up doing what? I mean, they went 11-2. And I know Bryce Young got them out of a lot of problems, but I can guarantee you, and it's not crazy to think Alabama's defense is going to be a lot better this year, even with Will Anderson leaving. I mean, you got to think just up front. I mean, they bring back Kool-Aid McKinstry. He's one of the best DBs in the nation. I think he had 17 pass breakups last year. It's going to be an offense to where it's going to fit more of Nick Saban's style. Go back to 2010 with Nick Saban, where they want to turn around and run the football. And I think after Jahmyr Gibbs, who's a hell of a football player, I mean, he got picked in the top 15 picks, going to the line, it's going to be phenomenal. But he was more of a Swiss Army knife guy instead of in the tackles type of guy running the football. And I think Nick Saban with Tommy Rees, who he's going to control emotionally, I want to see how Tommy gets when things are going bad, because it's not always going to be good. But I think it's going to go back to Nick Saban's roots, and that's going to be relying on your defense in big moments in games, the depth on your defense. Even leaving Will Anderson, Alabama's defense will have somebody emerge on both sides of the football. I haven't seen an Alabama offense this bad, not outside of Bryce Young, from the offensive line to receivers. I couldn't tell you an impact player in Alabama's receivers last year, and I can't tell you the last time that's happened. So for Auburn to go 9-3, it'll be a miracle, in my opinion. An absolute miracle, just because the talent up front and the quarterbacks, I don't believe in them at all. You think Peyton Thorne's going to come in and fix a lot of things? I promise you he's not. But I will believe in the identity of Alabama, and I'll be a crazy man before I come on here and bet against Nick Saban winning 10 games.
Look, let me ask you this. Okay, take Bryce Young off, put this quarterback group on last year's team, Alabama wins 9 games.
Yeah, but I know. But I mean, he was on there. That's the thing about it.
Okay, so look at what they've lost.
For
defensively, you lose Will Anderson.
Okay.
You lose the Mike. We know they replace Alabama recruits at an unbelievably high level. But so now we're just going to assume, because Nick Saban wants to run the ball on defense, that all this are on offense, that now the defense is going to be elite again.
No, I'm just going to assume that the defense is going to be elite again because Nick Saban's their coach.
Okay, Nick Saban was our coach the last couple of years, right?
Yeah, what about all the years before last year?
Okay, again, that's great, but I'm talking about the most recent. If you want to go back to 2010, we can do that, but that has absolutely no bearing on 2020.
You don't have to go back to 2010. You go back 3 years ago.
What players are left on that team that are still here? There's a lot of players on that team.
Alabama's going to have phenomenal defensive players.
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if you want to go back to a ball control offense where we say down set hut, we're going to run it down your throat. Alabama hasn't been able to line up and run it down anybody's throat the way they used to in the last 2 years.
I'm not saying they're going to turn around and run the ball 80%.
Okay, then you better score points to win, because if you think that defense is going to just all of a sudden, after losing Will Anderson and some of those other guys, because they have Kool-Aid McKinstry as DB, and I love Caleb Downs. I think he's the best freshman DB in the country. But the way Alabama used to win is not the way that they've played the past couple years. And the way that they're coaching now, they're going to totally change their style back to who they used to be, and that's going to take time. So my point is, it's a transition year for Alabama to me. You're transitioning at quarterback, you're transitioning at left tackle, you're transitioning at your best pass rusher, your Mike's gone. That's great, you return some DBs, but at the end of the day, you can't cover somebody for 7 seconds. So if there's any time to catch Bama, it's this year, and they are not the top dog up front anymore. I'd take Michigan's offensive line over Alabama's. I'd take Georgia's offensive line over Alabama's. I'd take Ohio State's offensive line over Alabama's, and there may be a couple more I'd put in there. So we can't just pretend like it's the water boy and go into school that Alabama's going to line up and be 2013 Alabama, 2016 Alabama. We can't pretend that. And 2020 Bama isn't coming back out on offense. And that's just the truth.
I don't feel like we're not pretending about anything, but I mean, when you talk about ball control offense, it depends on who's going to play quarterback. Is Jalen Milroe going to play quarterback? Because now you're going to have a true dual threat opportunity at quarterback, which they haven't had to have in the last couple seasons, because you've seen some of the best passers in Alabama history. And then talking about transitional year, I agree with you. You can just look at that and see it's going to be a transitional year at Alabama, but they're not transitioning at the head coach, which Auburn is. And there's no greater piece to be transitioning at for a program than at the head coach. Mm-hmm. And I still believe in Hugh Freeze. Look, if they win 9 games, they should be toilet papering Toomer's Corner for a year. I think
for sure.
That'd be a heck of a season.
Yeah, well, and again, I'm not predicting Auburn to go 9-3. What I'm saying is the chances of them having identical records this year, because look, first-year head coach, we've seen this before. You can sneak people. We see it all the time. First, Sonny Dykes goes into TCU, sneaks the whole Big 12. Gus Malzahn comes in the SEC, sneaks the whole SEC. So there is an advantage to being a first-year head coach in a new conference sometimes.
But Hugh Freeze has been there, and he beat Nick Saban.
That's exactly right.
So Nick Saban's going to be familiar with what he's able to do.
For sure. But again, Nick Saban was familiar with Gus Malzahn. The guy wrote the book on the hurry-up, no-huddle offense, changed kind of the game of college football. So look, is it a high probability? No, not at all. I'm not sitting here predicting Auburn and Alabama to both go 9-3. Personally, gun to my head right now, I think Auburn falls in the 8-4, maybe 7-5 range. Because again, the schedule, it's not a walk in the park by any stretch of the imagination. But I do agree with you, week 2, against Texas. You're going to find out a lot about Alabama when it comes down to it. Hey, YouTube, appreciate you checking us out. Do us a favor. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you like the video if you like it. Best way to keep us growing. We appreciate you.